In my last video, we explored the man trapped in a boy's psyche, what Carl Jung called the puer aeternus, the eternal boy. We talked about why so many modern men stay stuck in fantasy, afraid to commit, unable to grow up. But what if I told you, that boy wasn't weak? He was wounded. Here's the truth most people never tell you. You didn't become calm because you're grounded. You didn't become agreeable because you're wise. You didn't become quiet because you're at peace. You became that way to survive. You learned to suppress your fire so you wouldn't burn the people who hurt you. You learned to play nice so no one would leave. You learned to be tame because being wild got you punished. Obedience was never your nature. It was your armor. And now, it's your prison. There's a reason your life feels muted. Safe, maybe, but hollow. You've done everything right. You've been responsible, respectful, soft-spoken, emotionally intelligent. But deep down, you feel numb. Not because you're broken, but because you buried the part of you that knew how to feel alive. The part that ran wild, took risks, set fires, spoke truth, demanded to be felt. That part was your wild soul, and it didn't disappear. It went into hiding. Carl Jung once said, "You meet your destiny on the road you took to avoid it." And if you've spent your whole life avoiding chaos, conflict, anger, instinct, then chances are, your wild soul has been waiting on the other side of obedience, waiting for you to stop being good and start being whole. This isn't a call to destroy your life. This is a call to remember the part of you that was exiled to keep the peace. The boy who never got to yell. The man who never got to say no. The soul who was told to sit down, shut up, and behave. This video isn't about rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It's about sacred rebellion, the kind that brings you back to yourself. So if you've ever asked, why do I feel invisible? Why do I never speak up? Why am I always playing it safe? This is your answer. Your obedience wasn't a flaw, it was a trauma response. But now, it's time to break the spell. Let's begin. No child wakes up and says, I want to be obedient, I want to be quiet, I want to disappear. It happens slowly, subtly, through 1,000 moments where the body learns, this version of me is safer. The loud child is told to lower his voice. The curious one is told not to ask so many questions. The angry one is punished until the fire turns inward. And so the wild soul gets buried, and something else takes its place. A mask, a role, a survival strategy. Trauma doesn't just wound, it reshapes. It rewires the nervous system to prioritize safety over selfhood. You stop asking, what do I want, and start asking, what keeps me safe? You become hyper-aware of tone, mood, danger, disapproval. You shrink yourself preemptively to avoid rejection, to avoid punishment, to avoid being too much. And people reward it. They call you mature, easygoing, wise beyond your years. But deep down, you're just managing fear. Many men don't even realize they were traumatized because no one hit them. No one screamed. But trauma doesn't always show up as violence. Sometimes it shows up as absence, as silence, as emotional starvation. You didn't get the nurturing that told you, it's okay to be you. So you became whatever made other people comfortable. You weren't raised. You were managed. And when your nervous system lives in constant alert, even joy starts to feel like a threat. So you grow up being the nice guy. You please. You accommodate. You avoid conflict at all costs. You keep relationships peaceful, but shallow. You keep conversations smooth, but forgettable. Because your core belief is this. If I express too much, I'll lose love. If I say what I really feel, they'll leave. And so you shrink. Not because you're weak, but because you were trained to. Let's be clear about something. Obedience isn't always morality. Sometimes it's a trauma response in disguise. It's not your nature. It's your nervous system doing its best to protect you. And that protection, it worked back then. But now, it's killing your vitality, your relationships, your truth. Because the man who was taught to be safe often forgets how to be real. He talks about healing, but avoids conflict. He talks about depth, but fears confrontation. He craves love, but withholds the very parts of himself that love needs to thrive. Carl Jung believed that until you become conscious of these patterns, they run your life, and you call it destiny. And this shrinking obedience, is one of the deepest unconscious patterns there is. It tells you, be quiet. Be small, be nice. Be agreeable. Don't risk. Don't feel too much. Don't take up space. And you don't even realize it's happening because it feels normal. But here's the truth. What feels safe isn't always what's true. The wild soul cannot breathe in that space. It gets suffocated, softened, domesticated. And over time, you don't just forget your voice. You forget that you ever had one. But the body remembers. It remembers what it was like to be wild, to scream, to run, to love without restraint, to feel rage and not be destroyed by it. And that memory lives under the obedience. It's buried, not gone. It's still there, waiting. So let me ask you this. What parts of you did you kill off to survive? What instincts did you suppress so you'd be loved? What fires did you put out so you wouldn't be punished? Because that obedience once protected you. But now, it's a leash, and the wild soul is tugging at the end of it. In the next chapter, we go even deeper. We'll explore how the parts you silenced didn't die, they went underground. We call it the shadow, the hidden power of the repressed self. And it holds the keys to your fire. When you bury your voice, you don't just lose sound, you lose power. And when you silence your rage, you don't become peaceful. You become pressurized. What you suppress doesn't disappear. It just moves into the dark. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious part of yourself made of everything you're unwilling to face. Your shame, your rage, your jealousy, your need, your defiance, your desire. All the things you were told to hide, you didn't outgrow them, you buried them, not because you're broken, but because you were trained to believe those parts were dangerous. And so you became safe. You smiled. You stayed calm. You tried to be the good son, the stable partner, the agreeable man. But deep down, there was a split. Who you really were, and who you needed to become to survive. And that split, that's where the shadow lives. The shadow isn't evil. It's exiled power. It holds the instincts you weren't allowed to express, the boundaries you never learned to set, the voice that was punished, the fists that were told to unclench. And the longer you avoid it, the more it runs your life from the dark. You'll feel it in moments of overreaction, sudden jealousy, emotional shutdown, passive-aggressive blame, explosive rage at minor triggers. You'll say, I don't know where that came from. But your shadow knows. It came from everything you didn't let yourself feel when it mattered most. Let me be clear. Your shadow doesn't make you bad. It makes you unfinished. Because wholeness isn't light. It's integration. You can't reclaim your wild soul without walking through the basement of yourself. You can't become strong without meeting your weakness. You can't become sovereign without owning your rage. You can't become whole without meeting the parts you buried. Most men today are at war with their shadow, without even knowing it. They think they're evolved because they've numbed their edges. They talk about masculinity, discipline, and leadership, but deep down, they're terrified of their own chaos. They avoid intensity. They dodge conflict. They moralize emotion. And the result? A man who is good, but not real. The shadow doesn't go away because you ignore it. It waits and it leaks into your relationships, your parenting, your sexuality, your career, your self-image. Every time you self-sabotage, every time you lash out and regret it, every time you feel hollow after success, that's the shadow asking to be met, not judged, not condemned, witnessed. So how do you begin? You start by listening to your discomfort. You watch for your triggers. You pay attention to the emotions you call too much, because those are your portals. Write, speak, feel, express, safely, consciously, honestly. Not to fix it, but to face it. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your healing won't come from being more polite. It'll come from being more honest. And when you reclaim the parts of yourself you left behind, you'll feel something strange. Energy, edge, vitality, power. The part of you that was tired, numb, unsure, begins to wake up. Because the soul doesn't live in control. It lives in truth. So if you've spent your life performing the calm, collected, agreeable self, it's time to go beneath the surface. Not to destroy who you were, but to reunite with who you are. because your wild soul lives on the other side of that door. And the shadow holds the key. In the next chapter, we go deeper. What happens when you silence your instincts for too long? What happens when rage becomes depression, when desire becomes numbness, and when the soul goes quiet? We'll explore what it really means to lose your wild soul, and how to find the trail back. Ready? Let's keep going. You weren't always like this. There was a time, before the world got heavy, before you were told to behave, before the masks became permanent, when you were wild. Not reckless, alive, instinctive, vibrating with presence. You felt things fully, spoke without second-guessing, moved without fear of judgment. And then something happened. You didn't decide to change. You were taught to shrink, to edit yourself, to swap fire for silence, hunger for control, truth for obedience. And in that exchange, your wild soul began to die. The wild soul isn't chaos. It's not destruction. It's life in its purest form. It's the part of you that knows when to say no, that growls when boundaries are crossed, that dances without shame, that doesn't ask for permission to exist. It's the part of you that can feel rage without becoming a monster, feel lust without needing approval, feel grief without apologizing. It's raw, unfiltered, elemental, and it's the part of you most exiled by trauma. Because when survival is the goal, wildness becomes a liability. You learn to quiet your body, flatten your voice, push down the impulse, smile through discomfort. You trade authenticity for acceptance, freedom for approval, vitality for safety, and the world applauds you for it. They say you're grounded, mature, put together. But inside, something feels dead. You follow the rules, you keep things peaceful. You're productive, responsible, even successful. But deep down you feel it, that hollow ache, that sense that you're just performing life instead of living it. The death of the wild soul isn't loud, it's quiet, slow, respectable. It looks like discipline, but it's just disconnection. It looks like emotional control, but it's numbness. It looks like politeness, but it's self-erasure. And the most dangerous part? You get used to it. You get used to feeling half alive. You build a life around what you should do, what you ought to say, what's expected of you. And in doing so, you lose contact with who you are. Not the idea, not the brand, not the identity, but the animal truth of your being. That truth doesn't speak in words. It speaks in sensations, in fire, in resistance, in longing. It's the part of you that wants to scream when something's unjust, that wants to run toward what you love and burn what no longer serves you. But when you're told your fire is too much, you turn it into smoke. You smother it with logic, overthinking, and fake calm. And one day, you wake up in a life that fits, but doesn't ignite. The wild soul doesn't want chaos. It wants honesty. It wants you to stop pretending you're okay when you're not, to stop playing nice when your boundaries are being crossed, to stop acting small so others can feel big. It wants you back, not as a polished version, not as someone with all the answers, but as someone alive, unfiltered. There is no calendar for this moment, no checklist, no 5-step plan. There's just this question. When did you abandon your aliveness? Trace the moment, not with blame, but with awareness. Because what you abandoned, you can reclaim. The wild soul didn't die. It went underground. It's waiting, in your breath, in your body, in the silence after pretending, in the instinct you've ignored, not to destroy your life, but to give it back to you. Knowing you've lost your wild soul is not enough. Recognition is only the doorway. The work begins when you choose to walk through it. You can't think your way back into wholeness. You can't perform healing like a checklist. You have to descend into the shadow, into the body, into the parts of you still frozen in fear, shame, and silence. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before obedience became your armor. So how do you begin? Start with what Jung called the work of the unconscious. Because the things that control you the most are the things you don't see. Your triggers, your defense mechanisms, the way you over-apologize, the way you disappear when things get hard, the way you explode when you're afraid to feel weak. These are all messages, signposts pointing back to where the wound lives. You must become a witness, a mirror, a fierce observer of your own inner life, without shame, without performance, without trying to be good. Shadow work isn't mystical, it's brutally honest. You ask, where am I still faking it? What part of myself do I judge in others? When did I start believing that who I am is too much? You write. You sit in silence, you let what's hidden speak, not for insight, but for integration. You don't fix the shadow, you invite it in. Then comes active imagination, a Jungian tool to dialogue with the inner parts. Close your eyes. Picture the boy who was told to behave, ask him what he needed. Picture the wild man inside you, ask him what he wants now. Let your unconscious speak, not from logic, from symbol, from image, from instinct. Because the soul doesn't speak English, it speaks energy. Dream work is another portal. Don't ignore your dreams. They are messages from the deep. The things you repress in waking life rise in metaphor while you sleep. Keep a journal. Draw the symbols. Ask what parts of you are showing up disguised. Your dream of being chased? Maybe that's a buried part of you, trying to be caught. But this work isn't just psychological, it's physical. You can't reclaim the wild soul through thought alone. You need to feel your way back. That means breath, movement, stillness, sound, tension, release. Your nervous system must rewild itself, not just relax. Wake up. Try primal movement. Try cold exposure. Try ecstatic dance. Try screaming into a pillow. Try silence until your body speaks. The wildness isn't out there. It's under your skin. And you don't have to do this alone. Find a men's circle. Find a therapist who understands depth work. Find elders, not influencers. You don't need a mentor with a perfect body or $1,000,000 brand. You need someone who's walked through fire and can hold yours without flinching. Because healing isn't pretty. It's sacred, messy, slow, and real. Lastly, compassion. You don't punish yourself back into power. You love yourself back into wholeness. There will be days you regress, days you forget, days you feel numb again. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. This isn't a straight line. It's a spiral, a descent, a rebirth. Your wild soul isn't asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to come home, not with grand declarations, but with quiet, embodied truth. You're not here to perform healing. You're here to feel it, to live it, to carry it. There's a moment in every healing journey when grief turns into rage, when silence begins to crack, and something wild stirs from beneath the shame. That's the moment most people try to shut it back down. Because it's loud. It's inconvenient. It doesn't care about being liked. But what if I told you? That anger, that defiance, it isn't regression, it's rebirth. You see, real healing isn't just gentle, it's disruptive. It breaks your patterns, it confronts your obedience. It burns down the version of you built to survive, so something true can take its place. The world told you rebellion was dangerous, but in truth, rebellion is sacred. It's what happens when the soul refuses to stay silent. You weren't born to just manage life, you were born to feel it, shape it, challenge it. But when trauma teaches you to be agreeable, you forget how to say no. No to shrinking, no to pretending, no to staying small for the comfort of others. Rebellion doesn't mean chaos, it means correction. It means aligning with truth, even when it's inconvenient. It means breaking the unspoken contracts you made with silence and shame. When you reclaim your wildness, you'll feel resistance rise, inside you and around you. People might say you've changed, that you're not as nice as you used to be, that you're more intense now. Good. Intensity is the return of presence. It means you're inhabiting yourself again. Let them call it rebellion. You call it remembering. This rebellion isn't external. It's not about proving anything. It's about coming home to your gut, to your fists, to your spine, to your no, to your yes. It's the kind of rebellion that says, I refuse to stay invisible. I will not apologize for my depth. I won't betray my truth to make you comfortable. This isn't the rebellion of ego. It's not about dominance. It's about dignity. You're not here to burn everything down. You're here to burn through the illusions. The illusion that being quiet makes you kind. The illusion that being agreeable makes you whole. The illusion that staying in line makes you free. The truth? You were never meant to fit. You were meant to ignite. And yes, This fire might cost you some things. Comfort, familiarity, approval. But what you gain, self-respect, clarity, soul. You'll start to trust your instincts again. Speak before you edit. Say no without guilt. Say yes without fear. Feel anger without shame. Hold grief without apologizing for the weight of it. You'll move differently, slower, truer, with your whole body behind your choices. And people will feel it. Not just your words, but your presence. This rebellion isn't about destruction. It's about direction. The direction of truth, of embodiment, of the path that was buried the moment you became obedient. You don't have to tear down everything to rebuild yourself. You just have to stop abandoning who you really are. There is power in defiance, not as violence, but as remembrance. You are not here to behave, you are here to belong to yourself again, fully, without performance, without apology. So what does it mean to be whole? Not healed, not perfect, not endlessly calm, but whole. It means you've walked through the fire of who you're not and came back holding the truth of who you are. It means you're no longer chasing freedom by avoiding responsibility. You're building a life that can contain your wildness without killing it. You are no longer obedient, you are untamed. But you're not reckless. You're rooted. The untamed man is not unhinged. He's not chaotic. He's not trying to burn the world down. He knows how to hold fire without dropping it. Because he's met his rage and made it conscious. He's met his lust and made it sacred. He's met his grief and made it fuel. That's the mark of a man who has done the work, not just shadow work, integration. You see, wildness without structure is just self-destruction. Structure without wildness is just self-betrayal. Integration is the sacred tension between both. You bring back the primal, but you give it direction. You bring back the instinct, but now it's intelligent. You bring back the soul, but now it's centered. This is where most men get stuck. They either stay in the cage of obedience, where everything is controlled, sterile, safe, or they break free and spiral into rebellion, confusing chaos for transformation. But wholeness? That's something else entirely. Wholeness says, I can feel my rage without becoming it. I can speak my truth without destroying the room. I can move with instinct and still choose discipline. It's not about choosing between wild or wise, it's about being both. And it starts with one sacred decision. Stop abandoning yourself. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you play small for comfort, every time you betray your body for peace, every time you leave your truth out of fear, that is abandonment. And the only way back is to reverse the pattern. To stay, to speak, to stand. Not from the mask, not from performance, from presence. The untamed man isn't loud. He's clear. He doesn't seek dominance. He radiates direction. He doesn't explode to feel powerful. He breathes deep and knows who he is. He doesn't fear intimacy. He knows it's the sharpest mirror and he meets it. He is no longer acting out his shadow, he is holding it. He is no longer fantasizing about his wildness, he is living it, in real time, in real choices. Wholeness doesn't mean nothing hurts, it means pain doesn't own you anymore. You're not reactive, you're responsive. You know your edge, but you're not driven by it. You can sit in silence. You can listen without preparing a reply. You can lead without needing to be liked. Because your power no longer comes from control, it comes from alignment. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, not what your trauma created, not what society sculpted, not what your ego marketed, but your whole integrated self, shadow and soul, instinct and structure, grief and greatness, not at war with your wildness, but walking with it. This man doesn't just change himself, he changes everything around him, because presence is contagious. Truth is magnetic. Integrity shifts rooms without raising its voice. People feel him and remember something inside themselves, something they buried too. He becomes a mirror, a reminder, not by force, but by being who he is, unapologetically. Not perfect, but alive. The man who's done this work doesn't need to shout. His boundaries are quiet, his leadership is felt, his love is fierce, his soul is grounded. He doesn't need to be impressive. He needs to be true. And that truth? It's not something you find in books or borrow from others. It's forged in grief, in fire, in solitude, in saying no, in reclaiming the parts of you that got scattered across a lifetime of obedience. This is the moment the boy becomes the man. Not when he gets a job. Not when he has a child. Not when he plays the role, but when he stops running from himself. When he can look in the mirror without flinching. When he can feel desire without shame. When he can hold another soul and not lose his own. That is the man the world needs now. Not another polished shell, not another obedient performer, but a whole man, untamed, integrated, alive. You were never meant to be tame, not emotionally neutral, not agreeable at all costs, not silent to stay safe. You weren't born to manage everyone's expectations while quietly dying inside. But that's what obedience does. It doesn't just keep you in line. It erodes your edge. It makes you polite, but disconnected, peaceful, but exhausted, accepted, but invisible. And the worst part, it rewards you. It gives you applause. It gives you surface-level connection. It gives you a place to belong, as long as you stay within the lines. But it takes something from you in return. It takes your fire, your instincts, your yes, your no, your wild soul. So now, you're here. You've followed the rules. You've been the good one. You've kept the peace. You've done the work, and yet, you still feel like something's missing. Let me tell you something no one else will. You don't need more healing. You need to come back to yourself. Your soul isn't broken. It's buried. Buried under trauma, under roles, under obedience disguised as virtue, under years of emotional restraint mistaken for wisdom. And now, it's waking up. The ache in your chest, the restlessness in your gut, the way you bite your tongue just a little too often. That's not anxiety. That's your soul asking to come home. Not the polite self, not the socially correct self, not the always calm, never angry, always agreeable self, but the wild one, the messy one, the untamed one, the real one, the one you were. Before trauma told you to be small, before culture told you to sit still, before the world rewarded your silence with survival. Yes, you needed to obey to survive. Yes, you had to play along to stay loved. Yes, you made yourself smaller to stay safe, and you did what you had to do. But that version of you was never the final one. It was just the version that got you through. Now it's time to return. Return to the voice you swallowed. Return to the truth you dimmed. Return to the body you abandoned. Return to the path you walked away from. Not to burn down your life, but to light it up. Because the wild soul isn't chaos. It's clarity. It's conviction. It's movement. It's what you've been missing every time you felt numb after doing the right thing. It's what you've been mourning without even knowing it. It's what lives beneath your burnout, your emotional distance, your self-doubt. And the only way to reclaim it is to choose it. Not once, but over and over in the quiet moments, in the hard conversations, in the moments where your nervous system wants to disappear again. You stay, you breathe, you speak, you show up, not as the obedient one, but as the integrated one, not as the rebel without direction, but as the man who's remembered who he is. This is your moment. No guru, no formula, no checklist, just you, your soul, your body, your breath, and your memory. The memory of who you were before the world told you to fear yourself. You're not broken. You're reawakening. Wholeness is not a destination. It's a decision. A decision to stop abandoning your truth. A decision to stop calling numbness peace. A decision to stop labeling wildness as immature. A decision to stop confusing quiet with wisdom. The real you? He never left. He was just waiting for permission. But here's the truth. You don't need permission anymore. You need courage. So take a breath. Feel your spine. Feel your fists. Feel your gut. Feel your aliveness. And then decide, are you going back to the cage? Or are you walking into your own becoming? Not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, but because the fire inside you was never meant to be contained. If this woke something in you, subscribe to our channel. This isn't a channel for more polished self-help. This is for the ones waking up, the ones who've played the game, worn the masks, and are done pretending. Here we talk Jungian depth, shadow integration, soul reclamation, masculine embodiment, spiritual rebellion. We walk through fire. We don't bypass the dark. We name what others avoid. If that sounds like you found your place. Like the video. Leave a comment. Tell the truth. And if you're ready, reclaim your wild soul. It was never lost, just waiting.